So Andor gets off to maybe a slightly slower start than I wanted it to. And I think Disney made a mistake billing it as 3 separate episodes rather than just releasing one 90-minute-ish opening episode, a single, almost like a movie, right? Because the 3 episodes that released last week on Disney Plus for Andor, they only work as one piece. If you just watch one episode, it ends in a weird place. If you watch 2 episodes, again, it sort of ends where it feels like it should be a commercial break or something, you know? You have to really watch the whole 3-episode arc for it to work. And most of the really good stuff doesn't really happen until the 3rd episode. But I have to say, I really enjoyed the whole thing. I think this is the best Star Wars since The Mandalorian, which doesn't say a lot, I realize, since the only Star Wars we've gotten in the between times, for the most part, other than animated stuff, which I'm just going to leave aside for now, has been Obi-Wan, the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, which was a steaming pile of dog shit. I think that's officially what it was. And then Boba Fett, the Book of Boba Fett, which was half a steaming pile of dog shit and half just The Mandalorian, which was fine. What I like about Andor is it's very similar to Rogue One, which I think is, looking back over the spread of Disney era Star Wars, is probably my favorite of the bunch. I actually think that Rogue One and Solo are probably the best movies out of all of the movies that Disney's made, followed by The Force Awakens. The trilogy, I'm going to have to make a post about the trilogy because I went to each of those movies with my kids, and watching them with my kids made me more forgiving of their many sins and failures and shortcomings. So I would always leave those movies kind of jazzed because, we'd always dress up in our Star Wars gear. We'd go and, when we went to The Last Jedi, we went to this a movie theater where you can get dinner and like beer and stuff. We were all in our costumes, and my son was little. He had a lightsaber, like a real glowing lightsaber and everything. And at the actual theater, there were these, everyone, there was the Cantina Band, Darth Vader, Stormtroopers, all these actors just dressed up, and there was music, and it was a really fun experience. And I think that made me enjoy kind of just enjoy the experience so much that I didn't really care that the movie had all these problems. But then later on, as I tried to rewatch it, and as I, went back with a more critical and less like just fan approach, I started noticing all these problems. So Andor and The Mandalorian have been the best Star Wars content we've gotten since, really, Rogue One and Solo. I liked Solo because I went in with very low expectations, and it was actually a fun movie. And Rogue One was great. I really enjoyed Rogue One. Andor's like the prequel to Rogue One, right? You have Cassian Andor, played by Diego Luna, and he is sort of, this is just a few years after the Empire has taken over, and he is like a thief and like a scoundrel, right? But he's very anti-emperor, or empire. And we haven't really established why so much yet. We've established his sort of childhood in a very primitive society where he was basically... him and his, I guess it's all children that lived in this society. I'm not sure, but they went to check out the shipwreck, and he got separated from his group and knocked unconscious and was taken then by this woman who becomes his adoptive mother. And then in the present, they're still living together. He's a grown man, but he lives with his mom. Gosh, Cassian, mama's boy. And they're on this very industrial planet, and he has his sort of connections there, his friends and whatnot. He's betrayed by his female friend's boyfriend, who's jealous and betrays him to this corpo security unit that's looking for him after he kills 2 men while he's searching for his sister. Doesn't matter. This is all just setup stuff, getting him to meet up with the rebellion, right? The very nascent rebellion that's just about to start. And so most of this is set up, establishing some backstory for Andor himself, and kind of introducing us to this world, which is, I thought, really an interesting. They did a really interesting job, like portraying this worker colony, basically the tension between the workers and the security, which the security sort of feels like a direct branch of the Imperial security forces, even though they're corporation security. They are basically Imperial. So this is a very fascistic setup, like the idea that corporations are working directly with the government, directly with the Empire to sort of oppress people and exploit labor, exploit resources, and all that. I thought they did a really interesting job with that. I loved when the security forces actually show up and everyone kind of freaks out and they start banging on things, kind of sending out a warning. It reminded me actually a little bit of the dogs in 101 Dalmatians that all start howling and sending the message down the line that the puppies are in trouble. That third episode is where most of the like really big action happens, outside of like the initial like mugging of Andor and him killing those guards. The real action takes place when the security forces show up because they've been tipped off, and so does Stellan Skarsgård's character, Luthen Rail. He shows up to buy a device from Andor, but also it turns out to hopefully get Cassian to come with him because he's looking to recruit people to help him in his rebellious efforts, which we don't really know much about yet because that's not introduced yet. So the bad guys show up. There's this big warehouse that they've met in with these great big steel, I don't know what they are, big parts, giant heavy metal parts. And when the security forces show up, Luthen has rigged the doors with explosives already because he's just a very savvy operator. He blows the doors and takes out a couple of the security troops, and then there's a big shootout, and this is a great set piece. I really enjoyed this because as they're fighting, these explosions have also damaged some of these chains that are holding up these big metal objects, and they start to fall. And so as there's this gunfight, and as Cassian keeps trying to go back and get the device, all these big metal pieces are falling, and it's very exciting, very tense action sequence. Something lacking entirely from so far all 5 episodes of The Rings of Power, I will just point out, and probably a better action sequence than anything we saw in Obi-Wan. That's for sure. Obi-Wan had the worst action sequences. I can't even believe it still, how bad Obi-Wan was and how much better this is. And not just in terms of action sequences, but also just production value. They've created the world created here, the aliens, the robots, everything that's going on here is a much, much more lovingly produced show, from the cinematography to the special effects, than anything in Obi-Wan. And isn't that strange? I mean, Andor is a minor character compared to Obi-Wan. You would think that Disney and Lucasfilm would have put all of their budget and all of their energy into making Obi-Wan look as slick as this. But no, somehow they did not. Anyways, Luthen and Andor get away, but they're being pursued. His contact, the fence, basically, who's put him together with Luthen in the first place, Bix, played by Adria Arjona. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. She's the one who was betrayed. Her boyfriend betrayed everyone. She has been waylaid by Corpo goons, handcuffed to some posts, and then like watched as they kill her boyfriend, and so she's kind of distraught. The Cassian and Luthen trick the bad guys by putting a bomb in like a hover car, sending that down the street, and they're shooting at it. It crashes, and then they walk up to the car, and then it explodes, killing several more of them, and then Cassian and Luthen hop on a speeder bike, get away, get to Luthen's ship, and are out of there. The other main character is, I guess, Cyril Karn. He's like the lieutenant of this security forces. He was actually ordered not to investigate those murders. They just weren't worth it. And he is a really interesting character. He's kind of like, he's a true believer, right? He really, really believes in his job. He thinks, he's a very, he's an imperial lackey, right? Who very much believes in law and order and bringing these criminals to justice. And he's also very green. So when he tries to give his men an inspirational speech, it's anything but inspirational. And when all this shit goes down, he's basically shell-shocked. He can't even believe what he's seeing. He's lucky to be alive, because when Luthen and Cassian, they get the jump on him at one point and they just tie him up. Probably a mistake. They probably should have killed him off, but I realize this is for the story and for dramatic tension. They're going to leave him alive. Now that I have this all pulled up, Fiona Shaw plays Marva. Marva is Cassian's adopted mother. So she's the one who finds him on his home planet and rescues him. Some of the other people, there's the Sergeant Linus is sort of the right-hand man of Cyril Karn, and he's very Scottish. He's the professional soldier who actually knows what he's doing, but even he's caught flat-footed by the trickery that Cassian and Luthen Rael hoodwink them with, right? So I guess this has been more divisive than I thought it would be. I watched this with my kids. We watched all 3 in a row, and all of us just really enjoyed it. It really gave me a lot of Rogue One vibes. I realized that since we know the fate of Cassian Andor eventually, the stakes are a little lower than they would otherwise be. I guess I can see also how this time period has been sort of done to death, and I understand why, maybe, Star Wars fans would like to move to a different period, right? And especially, I would say, far, far away from anything, Empire, Rebel, Skywalker based. Go to the Old Republic days or something like that. There's thousands of years of Star Wars to explore, but we seem to stay within 40 minutes or so. Guys, no! Damn dogs. You can't make a single video without those damn dogs barking. So I can see why people would want to move away from this particular time period and this particular storyline. And I hope to God that they do not bring in any of the Skywalkers or any mention of Vader or any of that crap to this. I want a wholly original, I know they're going to have Saw Gerrera and they're going to have Mon Mothma and other figures within the rebellion, and that's fine. I just don't want any Skywalker crap. Please just let that be. Literally the worst part about Obi-Wan was Leia, and I like Leia. Leia's a great character, but little Leia is horrible. She was so obnoxious, and honestly, I enjoy them bringing Luke into The Mandalorian, but I think they could have done without. I think it would have been so much better if they had just left, the Jedi stuff to other Jedi, not Luke. There are other Jedi out there, and I'm spacing on their names right now, but you know what I mean. Ahsoka, that would have been good. Just leave. She could have been the whole. She could have just been that role in that story, and I think it would have been great. But I am very hopeful for Andor. I think it's quite good so far. I think they've done a really nice job with the special effects and the world building. The story, I think if they get really into like infiltrating the Empire and we get to see some of the inner machinations of imperial bureaucracy and all of that, and I think it could be really interesting. And I can't believe I've seen these such negative reviews of it, but overall I think people are responding pretty well. So let me know what you think in the comments, and you know the rest. You know the drill. You know to like and subscribe and shit. If you want to, you don't have to. It's cool. I'll survive. I will, I promise. Peace.